Good evening and welcome to this edition of Africa in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian broadcaster, writer, journalist, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And in this week's edition of Africa in Focus, we are continuing relationships and generally, but like I said last week when we were looking about what Ghanaian women are hiding, what some of them are hiding, I did say that we'll be looking about why I do not approve of interracial or biracial relationships. Okay, so this is what the theme is for this week's edition of Africa in Focus. Why I do not date or marry outside of my race, or why I do not approve of interracial, biracial relationships. All right, so before we get into the podcast, just to make you aware that subscribe to the Ghana Africa in Focus podcast on YouTube. We are now on YouTube, and look out for Ghana Africa on YouTube, and subscribe to the podcast. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell, meaning that every time I upload a new podcast, YouTube will notify you of that. So we want to get 200 subscribers by the end of the year. So far we're on 6. So if you have not subscribed to Ghana Africa in Focus on YouTube, please do. We're also on Spotify. Look out for Ghana Africa in Focus on Spotify. And again, follow me, and that will allow you to be notified every time I upload a new podcast. So again, we want to get 800 followers by the end of the year. So far, we're on 512. So thank you to all those who have followed me and subscribed on Spotify. And if you like what you hear, please share to your friends, your family, and social media networks, and spread the word. All right, so let's get into this week's podcast, looking about why I do not approve of interracial relationships and why I do not marry outside of my race. So for the record, I'm married to an African, Ghanaian, and more specifically, I can. And I truly believe, like Muhammad Ali said, and I will leave you a link to what Muhammad Ali said about interracial relationships, that, for the continuation of the race and to ensure that your children do not get confused about identity, and also to follow what Marcus Garvey said in terms of the race first, I must marry somebody that looks like me. Okay, and my children to look like me as well. And so, I'm an ardent follower of Marcus Garvey's race first, and that was instilled in me, and that informs me that I cannot marry anybody who is not an African, yeah? Because leaving a Black woman and marrying either a European, an Asian, or a Chinese would mean that I'll be a traitor to Black women, and that I don't find Black women attractive, and I think that other races of women are more appealing to me than African women. This is something that I will not do. I do not approve of it, and it's something that I'm happy that I did not do by marrying an African. And so when we look at places like not particularly in Africa, but when we look at the West, countries like Britain, particularly Britain, not too bad in America and Canada, but the numbers are beginning to pick up. But in Britain, where I am, when you have a situation whereby 40% of African or Black women are with non-white partners, or with non-African partners, and you get 70% of Black or African men in the UK with non-African women, for me, that's an issue. And I'll tell you why it's an issue. Because the numbers are not as high as America and also Canada, but the numbers are also, you have a situation whereby in the US and Canada, you have a lot of Black men, particularly those so-called celebrities and music people, marry outside of their race. But in America, the majority of Black men are with Black women, the majority of Black women are with Black men, and same in Canada. The UK seems to be an exception for that. And the reason why, I'm against the race mixing is, like I said, there are many black women out there in the world. So if you can't get a black woman in the US, there are some in Brazil. You can't get a black woman in Canada, go to US. You can't get a black woman in UK, go to the Caribbean. You can't get a black woman in Canada, come to Africa. So there are many African women, black women around the world who you can marry. Yeah. So a lot of black men use it as this, there isn't a decent black woman in Britain. So, I might as well marry white, which for me is stupid because if you as a black man, if you came out the womb of a black woman, why did you think that your child should not come with the same womb that you came from? So all these black men, and I know some of you will probably listen to this and think that I'm racist. Actually, you're the one who's being racist because you don't feel that black women, African women are good enough for you, and you want to, mix your blood, yeah, and marry somebody white or Chinese or Asian, yeah. So I want to ask you, if you, as a black man, African man, if you came from the womb of a African or black woman, why is it that you want your child not to come from the same womb that you came from? Yeah. But a lot of us black men in particular, but I'll come to black men also, but a lot of us as black men and black women, we don't really understand that race mixing is basically a ploy by the European to depopulate African people. Yeah, because if you look at in the UK, for example, where I live in the UK, you look at many advertisements and films and TV dramas and sitcoms, right? Very, very, very rare that you see an African man, African woman, and their children together happily in a sitcom or a film or whatever. However, and this is the standard that they're pushing, you will see either a black man and a white woman and their children, mixed children, or this is what I've been pushing now in the last 10, 15 years, a white man, Caucasian man, with an African woman or black woman and their children. So this is the agenda that they're pushing to kill the numbers of black people in the UK. Yeah? And before I go into reasons why they're doing it, let me just give you another one example of those. Some of you think I'm racist for even, talking about this. Now, in South Africa, where white people, Caucasians, are a minority, but they control the media and that kind of thing, they implement race mixing. How many black men are with white men in South Africa? And how many white men are with black women in South Africa? Not that many. Because in South Africa, you look at their films, you look at the TV, you look at the adverts in South Africa, they do not promote race mixing. Yeah? So I'm not saying, this was a part of apartheid, but race mixing in South Africa was prohibited under apartheid. But they know, the people that govern that country know, and the demographers and that kind of thing, they understand that if they promote race mixing in South Africa, the same way it's promoted in the UK, US, the West, etc., that white people would cease to exist in South Africa within a generation. So if they promoted black man, white woman, right, black man or black woman, white man, white people in South Africa would not exist in 20, 30 years. They would cease to exist. Yeah. And so because white people have got a big stake in South Africa, they are not going to let that happen. So this is why they do not promote race mixing in their country. That doesn't mean to say that there's no black man with white woman married or black woman with white man, but the numbers in South Africa are very, very minimal. That's because, like I said, if white society allowed race mixing to ferment like it has done in Britain, you wouldn't get a white people in South Africa in 20, 30 years. They all disappear. So now, let me give you a history of how race mixing has been used to black out or bleach out African presence in certain countries. Did you know that Mexico used to be majority black? Did you? Did you know that Argentina was a black country? In fact, the whole Latin America, Peru, Uruguay, Chile, Ecuador, um, Panama, you know, Colombia, all these countries were predominantly black countries, but particularly Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, where there's hardly any black people. And the reason for that is because the powers that be introduced race mixing as well as importing white people from Europe into Latin America to destroy the black numbers and increase the white numbers. This is why today in Argentina, you got like some Messi. Messi's not indigenous to Argentina. Go and trace Messi's lineage. Messi is either Spanish or Italian origin. Yeah. So race mixing was used in Argentina to wipe out Africans in Brazil, because Argentina, via the so-called slave trade, had a massive African presence in Argentina. In actual fact, it is said that the capital, Buenos Aires, yeah, had a 40% African population. Right? This is before 1900. Yeah. The capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires, had 40% African population. So how come now, when you go to Buenos Aires today, there's hardly any Africans? It's because of the policy of race mixing, miscongeneration, even some would say eugenics, to wipe out the black blood. Yeah. Again, Australia, they use the same agenda, same rule to kill out the Aboriginal people of Australia. Today you go to Australia, the Aboriginal people is about what? 400,000, 500,000 in the population of what? 18, 19 million. Why? Because race mixing was used by white Australia to black out the population of Aboriginal people, right? In actual fact, the British had a policy to steal, right, to steal Aboriginal children from their homes in the bush, and they brought them to these Catholic or Christian homes to make them more British, yeah? And they used British men to rape some of the Aboriginal girls that they stolen from the outback, and the mixed children that they produced became benefited British, benefited white people, because in those schools they were stripped of their name, their culture, their language, their religion, their deities. This is why today there's a lot of mixed race Aboriginals in Australia who look white like the Messi, but do not know their language, their culture, their spirituality, their deity, or their traditions. Because of this blackwashing or whitewashing, whatever way you want to put it, of Aboriginal culture and tradition and language by the British. So what I'm saying is that race mixing has always been a tool by the white man, by the European, to destroy African numbers. And the example that I've given you is proof of that. Yeah. And I'll leave you links that prove that race mixing was used to kill African people. Brazil is another example of how race mixing was used to stop the black numbers from rising. So you see today in Brazil, there's a lot of people who are mixed race. So you see the Brazil football team, yeah. People like if you want to look good, even today, yeah. People like Richarlison, people like Neymar, people like Daniel Alves. These are all mixed race Africans or mixed people in Brazil. Yeah, because Brazil had a policy of not allowing black people to marry black people. Yeah. And even today in Brazil, a lot of black men and mixed race men aspire to marry white because of this, this deep racial hierarchy that exists in Brazil. Even Pele, the greatest expert of Brazil, right? He even married white. telling you, right, that Brazil had a policy, covertly or overtly, to black out the African population in Brazil. Even despite this, there is still more than 80 million African people in Brazil, the second highest African population outside of Africa. The biggest concentration of Africans outside Africa is, believe it or not, in India. In India today, there are more than 300 million Africans, yeah, who are called the Dalit or untouchables because of their dark pigmentation, yeah, and these are the descendants of the indigenous Indians, yeah. So the Indians that you see, in UK, US, Canada, are not the real Indians. They're actually mixed race Indians. But that's for another story. The actual Indians, who the indigenous Indians, original Indians, are black like coal tar, black like the soil. Yeah, that's the real Indians. Yeah, and they descend from the Dravidians. Yeah, who are the indigenous original people of India. So, and even India, does race mixing play the part there as well? So what I'm saying is that race mixing has been a big, big part in destroying the black population. And so when in places like the UK, you get a disproportionate number, because in UK, African people are the only group of people in the UK who disproportionately marry outside of their race. Because if you look at Asians, whether they're Indian, Pakistani, Bengali, Sri Lankan, very few of them marry outside of their race. If you look at Chinese in the UK, again, very few marry outside of their race. You look at Jews in the UK, again, very few marry outside of their race. Same with the Arabs, etc. But Africans, people of African descent in the UK, like I said, the figures are alarming. Yeah. And that tells you that there are many things, nuances at play. One of them is mind control. Yeah, a lot of black people don't know that they are mind controlled by the system. So for example, when you look at the TV, the media, the films, and what they promote is a black man and white woman, and then a white man and black woman, what they are saying subliminally is that black man and black woman can't get on, right? Or the ideal black family, quote unquote, is a white man and a black woman and their mixed children, or a black man and a white woman and their mixed children. That is what society, especially in the UK, is pushing. And so when you, as somebody who is not clued on, or who is not conscious, who does not understand the agenda of race mixing, you will think that this is palatable, or this is the norm. Not understanding that the choice you make is not an informed choice, because the choice that you are making, because some say it's a choice that you're making, it's not. It's not a choice you're making, because that choice you are making is not an informed choice. It's a choice based on innuendo and the propagation of whiteness and the propagation of anti-blackness. That informs your so-called choice as to why you decide to marry outside of your race. And as Muhammad Ali said, and I put that thing there for you to see, this is when Muhammad Ali was conscious, right? Not the Muhammad Ali that, left the nation of Islam and lost his consciousness, no. This is the Muhammad Ali that we all love and we all got to know as the greatest. The man who was bold and said what he thought. Muhammad Ali said, right, no white man in his white mind will want their children to marry a black woman or a black man and have mixed with children and come home and say, this is your children. Again, no white man, a black woman would want their children to marry a white child and have half black children and say, this is your grandchildren. No, right? Because And like Muhammad Ali said, you are a traitor. You are a hater of self because you don't love, yeah, the color that God gave you. Because God didn't make you black for nothing. He made you black for a reason. And so, because of propaganda about anti-blackness, about black has become synonymous with ugly. Because if you look at the dictionary definition of black, yeah, you will understand this, yeah, and the way how black people are promoted in the media, particularly black women, where black women can be oversexed, particularly in the hip hop and R&B videos, yeah, and even some of the so-called Afrobeats videos, where our women are oversexed, yeah, it is a play on the psyche of particularly black men, that black women are this, black women are that, and the this and that. This is why I'm going to marry a white woman. And again, in the West, to black women, there's stereotypes of black men that, oh, they're stingy, they're this, they're that. They haven't got ambition, they're not as hardworking, blah, blah, blah. So you go and marry a white man, not understanding, not understanding that all that you are witnessing is propaganda. Propaganda to make you hate black women or to make you hate black men, so that you forfeit the race mixed agenda of marrying outside of your race. And we see today in Britain, what that produces. Because some of the children now that have been born of these so-called mixed relationships, right, look white. Yeah, I'll leave you a picture of a footballer in England, a footballer that plays for England, Cole Palmer. When you look at him, you wouldn't think that his grandfather's African, but his grandfather's African from St. Kitts. Yeah, and I'll leave you that picture there so you can see for yourself what the outcome of racism is like when you produce a child that doesn't look even African. Now, we come to even issues about identity. Now, many of these mixed, these biracial children, a lot of them, particularly in somewhere like the UK, and because of white society, they do not recognize themselves as black, even though the society that they live in, i.e. the UK, Germany, France, Spain, US, Canada, etc., Brazil, even though society identifies them as black, they themselves don't identify themselves as black because of the society slur of blackness. And so therefore, they say, I'm not black, but I'm mixed. But they can't say they're white, can they? Even though they've got a white father, a white mother, they can never say that they're white. I wonder why. But we know why. Yeah? And so many of these biracial children or mixed heritage children, whatever you want to refer it to, do not gravitate to the African side. The only way or the only time when they gravitate to the African side is particularly when they're young. And, because of the power of African music, so-called black music, but it's African music, yeah? Whether it's dancehall, reggae, R&B, hip-hop, right? And the hairstyles that you see a lot of the rappers do, cane rows, cornrows, locks, twists, etc., right? That is the only way that some mixed race children will identify with the African heritage, by wanting to lock their hair, cane row their hair, cornrow their hair, twist up their hair. I see it here in the UK that some mixed race children, right, who don't see themselves as black, but yet because of the sort of culture musically, right, because of the culture musically, and again the propaganda, want to gravitate to blackness by only doing cane rows or cornrows or that kind of thing. Yeah. But aside from that, many mixed race people do not like to be referred to as black. I actually met a child, right, one day coming from work, and I met a child, and this child was mixed race, right? But a child, you can tell a child had African blood in them, right? Because they had kinky, nappy, woolly hair, right? And had a high forehead. And I said to the child, you got a bit of black in you, haven't you? And when I said that child gave me a look at, how dare you refer to me as black? i.e., not appreciating their African heritage. And the reason is that a lot of these white mothers do not teach these part black children about African heritage. And again, this is another reason why I'm against, race mixing, interracial, biracial relationships, etc. Because a lot of the white side, i.e., for example, the white mother, when she marries or has to do with a black man, she does not allow that child to know anything about his black heritage, i.e., his black history, his black culture, its African food, etc. It's like when some of these mixed race children go to school and gravitate with African children, that's when they become competent with their African culture, African history, African food. But when they get back to their white mums, their white mothers refuse to engage that child in their black culture and African heritage. And this is why many mixed children have identity crisis, because a lot of them don't see themselves as African. Many of them don't see themselves as white, but they say they're mixed. Yeah, say they're mixed. But how can you say that you're mixed when you don't appreciate the African side of you? It doesn't make sense to me. Saying that you're mixed and not embracing your African heritage doesn't make sense to me. And it shows you the hatred, you can say hatred, that some, not all, some mixed race children have of the African heritage. Again, another reason why I'm against interracial relationships, because financially, when you marry a white person and you die, you are giving your money to a white person. White people generally are more better per capita than African people within the UK, US, Canada, what have you. And so when you marry a white person, when you die, that wealth is going back to a white community who are already financially well endowed. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's two examples. So Tina Turner, when Tina Turner married a white man after she got battered by Ike, and I understand that, but Tina Turner, in her subconscious, thought that after Ike, all black men were like Ike, potentially could be like Ike, white beater. And so she sought refuge in a white man. Yeah, right or wrongly, she sought refuge in a white man. So when she died, all that fortune man she had, I believe was 50 million, went to the white man. Not her black family. And Tina Turner had children with Ike. I think she had about 2 children with Ike and adopted 1 child with Ike. They got nothing out of that will. All that will went to the white man. Again, most of the footballers in the UK, yeah, and some sports stars in the US, right? Their money goes to white people. Again, let me give you a quick example. Former Arsenal player Emmanuel Eboué from La Côte d'Ivoire. Yeah, he became a very, very popular player for Arsenal. I believe it was part of the Invincibles 2004, where Arsenal went the whole season without losing a game. Emmanuel Eboué. Yeah, he allowed himself to be manipulated by society and went for a Caucasian woman. That white woman, that Caucasian woman, bled him dry, and she divorced him. She bled him dry to the extent that now Eboué is bankrupt and is living off the streets of London. He's homeless. Yeah? That's another example of that. When you marry to a white woman, she can potentially take all your money. O.J. Simpson, he was married to a black woman before he met Nicole. He was okay. But because O.J., in his subconscious, thought he had made it in white America, he thought, let me cement my status by marrying a white woman. And we all know what happened when he married Nicole Brown. Yeah? All the trouble that he got into. And, after he was acquitted, the white America, a lot of white America thought he did it. A lot of black America thought he didn't do it. But white America never forgave OJ for killing Nicole Brown Simpson. Yeah. And they finally got him when they incarcerated him, I think, in the late 2000s. And I think he died in prison last year or this year. So that goes to show that when you die, when you marry a European, you die, yeah, all your money goes to white men. Look at Kobe Bryant, another one. He died what, last year or 2 years ago by the white woman. All his future wealth, right? That intergenerational wealth that he could have made with a black woman in a black family goes to his white wife. Yeah. And so, when we look at this, we got to look at it very, very deeply. It's just about, it's not just about, oh, I love her or I love him. No, it's deeper than that. There's a deep psychological psychosis when you decide to marry outside of race. And like I said, the numbers in the UK are too much. Nobody would dispute that 1 or 2 black people would jump the fence, so to speak, and marry outside of the race. But the numbers in the UK, 40% of black women with white men or with non-black men, and 70% of African men, black men, with non-African women, that tells me something is seriously, seriously wrong. And that, like I said, we've allowed ourselves to come to anti-African stereotypes about ourselves. We've imbibed that. And we've allowed the white agenda of race mixing to allow us to hate ourselves. Because, self-hate, not liking your African features and wanting to bleach African features by having children who are part black. Yeah. And those children, again, will not marry a black because of the society's so-called norms. So those children will marry white. Yeah. And then children become white. Again, Meghan Markle is another example of that. Her children ain't black. She married Prince Harry. Her children ain't black. And so, in closing, race mixing has been a tool of the white elitist society to destroy African people. And like I said, there's a history, long, long history of that. From Australia, from Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, what have you. Long history of that. And I can't tell that by saying that in South Africa, they do not promote race mixing. Why? Because white people will be wiped out in a generation. And they cannot countenance that because they have a massive stake in South Africa. And so race mixing is an agenda to destroy black people. It's an agenda to depopulate black people, i.e. eugenics. Yeah. And more importantly, it is an attempt to destroy the black family because this is what they did during enslavement. The first thing that the European slave masters did was to separate the black man from the black woman, separate the black family. And that was the act of war. That was the act of treachery, when they separated the black man from his woman during slavery. And so this race mixing agenda is to destroy the black family. And this is why, like I said, in the UK, when you look at the adverts and the films and the TV sitcoms, TV documentaries, etc., you hardly, very, very rarely see a black family. But what you will see, though, is a mixed family. Subliminally saying that the ideal, quote unquote, black family is not a black family, but a mixed family. Yeah. And that has dangerous consequences for the population of African people in the UK. And so some of you may view this as being racist. That's fine. You're entitled to the opinion. But I, for one, like Muhammad Ali says, I am not a traitor to black women. I marry a black because I'm proud to be black and I want my wife to be black. And more importantly, I want my children and their children to look like me. So it's important that I marry somebody that looks like my mother and father, and I produce somebody that looks like me. And so, hope you've enjoyed this special edition of African Focus looking about why I did not entertain race mixing. And some of you may be offended, but that's fine. But if you like what you hear, please share, please like, subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube, subscribe to Ghana African Focus on Spotify. All right, so until next week, where we discuss monkeypox, because monkeypox are surfaced again in the African content, and I'll tell you again the hidden agenda behind that. It's thank you for listening to Africa in Focus with myself, Kwame, and we'll see you next time for some more Africa in Focus.